Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next show. We are going to talk about something super important to anybody with each passing year, and that is how to maintain strong bones. And for anybody who enjoys our discussions, please check out our separate, unique channel down below, where we have a lot more interesting discussions on how to maintain optimal health, especially as anybody gets older. So let's dive right in then. What are the important factors to maintain strong bones? We're going to go through something of a checklist. Let's start with protein intake. Gentlemen, let's talk about the importance of protein intake.
Absolutely. So, I think specifically in America, and you can see this more and more in other countries as well, there's been a shift in people's diet to be far more carbohydrate heavy. And when you see that and you see the lower amount of protein coming into the diet, that's where you get this big imbalance. And as time goes on, that can affect a number of things, but one of them is absolutely bone health.
I agree, Ben. And our diet is so carb heavy, and just in my practice in cardiovascular disease, I can't stress enough on people to cut back on carbs, especially like in this day and age. Most of them are processed, right? And you have these highly processed, carbs and even things that we may think are like healthier, like some of the oat milks and stuff like this have a lot of carbs. So I always tell my patients increase protein. Not only that will that help with weight loss with people, but it also helps cut back on carbs, which are really strongly linked to heart disease, inflammation.
Yeah, they are indeed. And yeah, carbohydrate intake. Unfortunately, statistics show in most people, those carbs and sugars, the intake is high. And at the end of the day, one of the best things to go back to is that good old fashioned advice when you have your plate, let half of it be protein. Many people, particularly, do you find this as well, gentlemen, over the age of 60, 65, are just not getting enough protein?
Absolutely, Sunil. And I think the problem is access to it. I've probably, in my experience with a lot of my patients in that age group is that they don't know really like what would be the protein source that would be best available, because actually the food industry has made it really complex, right? Because everything is just hitting carbs and processed. So, we can tell, patients increase protein, but that is a challenge. So it's really important to like find good source protein, whether you find it through someone who already takes it or a friend or sort of a naturopathic store.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is advice that, Sunil, you've given before, but it's to look at the ingredients on everything that you're buying. So there's a lot of misleading stuff, especially protein bars. You have to look at the back and see the concentration of sugar and carbohydrates, and how much protein's actually in there is very important as well.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, the best thing we all know, the good sources of protein out there, they are well known. And I want to talk for a moment about specifics of protein intake. So at a bare minimum, this is a bare minimum, the recommendation is for 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. So 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So do the conversion. So a 70 kilogram person should get a bare minimum of 70 grams, ideally more than 100. But statistics show that most people are not getting that. And this problem gets worse with each passing year. And protein, of course, as you already mentioned, there's a lot of confusion over what the good sources of protein are. We'll certainly talk at another time. But the thing to keep in mind is that protein is not just important for muscles, it's crucial for strong bones as well. So let's move on now to our second point, which is the critical nature of adopting some sort of strength training routine. We keep on talking about this. We don't want to sound like a broken record, but it is so important to have some sort of strength training routine with each passing year. Keep those muscles and bones strong.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So, I think in a few different ways, actually. So not just the strength training. And again, we've said this a million times, but it doesn't have to be the bodybuilder stuff, but just basic even light weights to make sure you're maintaining your strength. This not only helps with the bones, the muscles, but also the balance is so important, because what we get worried about is falls and fractures. And those are such a huge setback and can cause so many downstream problems. If you haven't had them already, we would much prefer you did not have them. So, strengthening your core, strengthening your arms, your legs, making sure you have good balance, it's absolutely vital.
It is. And there's lots of specific exercises, absolutely. And, that's a big part of your craft.
Well, yeah, well, just in cardiology in general, I mean, I always encourage exercise, but I think that really, core exercises are so important, like lifting small weights, high repetitions. It's much better, not only for your body, but for your heart, but also for your bones, because you want to have like regular impact. You don't need to do heavy weight because we're also worried about, people getting injured. But going back to building muscle mass and lean muscle mass is you need good sources of protein for that, right? In order to do that. So it all goes back to nutrition and really, like, the less carbs, more protein you have, you'll feel better, you'll work out better. That's better for your bones. And, indirectly by working out better, it's also better for your heart.
That's right. And if you haven't already got started on a strength training routine, why not? Unless there's some excuse which is very obvious why you can't do it. I'm of the opinion. I even see people who are in wheelchairs who are lifting light dumbbells. We're talking about going very slow to maintain that muscle mass. And ideally, what you want to do is some sort of balance exercises as well, even away from the strength training. Standing on one leg, there are other specific techniques like Tai Chi. But the goal here is to maintain your bone health and reduce the risk of frailty and falls. Because I'm sure, gentlemen, you would also back me up here with how when we see people over a certain age have a fall and a bad injury, end up in hospital, it's really difficult to come back from that.
Absolutely. It's extremely hard to come back from that. I mean, it depends on other issues you have as well, what we call comorbidities, but and it depends on the type of fracture and where, but it can take a very long time to rehab and recover. So, like many other things, it's about prevention. And that's what we're trying to do for you here, is try to prevent you from having these issues.
And some, and honestly, some people never recover from bad falls like fully. And so that's why it's like really, really important to, just avoid it in general.
We've got the sun coming out.
Yeah, it's amazing.
This is what we're going to talk about right next. Actually, that was,
Yeah, but what I would, this topic though is really dear to my heart, no pun, but you have to find something that you love to do. And if you think about just 30 minutes every 24-hour day to do exercise, for all the benefits we're going to talk about in this podcast and further ones, that's not that much to do, but you have to love what you do.
You have to, yeah. So please, strength training, some sort of balance exercises, keep your bones strong. Okay, next up. So the sun is shining on Dr. Chiatelis. We're going to talk about vitamin D and how crucial it is to have adequate vitamin D intake, either from sunlight or supplementation. People who are deficient in vitamin D, my goodness, it really works a number on the bones, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it doesn't, and you guys will see more in internal medicine, but we do know that, even in my world, that people who have higher, rates of osteoporosis have higher risks of heart disease as well.
Absolutely. So, and one of the main ways you make vitamin D, so you get it through your diet, you also get it through conversion of sunlight. Well, it's sunlight that converts a form of cholesterol into vitamin D that you then use. Now, there is a delicate balance here because you don't want to get too much sunlight. There's also the risk of skin cancers and things like that. So we do want to be a little careful. That being said, a healthy amount of sunlight, going out multiple times a day, getting a fair amount of sunlight is absolutely vital to getting good vitamin D.
Exactly. Most people don't get anywhere nearly enough sunlight. I mean, obviously, too much of anything is bad, especially if you've got a very fair skin complexion, if you're out in the sun, if you live in certain parts of the world. But overwhelmingly, the problems we see, I mean, where we are in a colder climate, is people, and this can get worse as anybody gets older. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I routinely test vitamin D in the patients I see in the hospital, and sometimes the numbers are in these single digits. And you can imagine how weak anybody's bones must be. But also there's a link to metabolic health and inflammation, which is a whole different topic. So most people I find have to supplement with vitamin D.
Yeah, I mean,
parts of the world, yeah.
Vitamin D, I mean, increases like insulin hypersensitivity and increased risk of diabetes. People with vitamin D deficiency have higher incidence of high blood pressure, arterial stiffness.
That's right. And at a bare minimum, you want the level to be at least 30. That's a bare minimum. There's a lot of hypotheses that it should be way higher. A quick word about people who have too much vitamin D. So I have encountered some people who are really loading themselves up with vitamin D and have these very super therapeutic levels. I'm of the belief that too much of anything is bad, and there is a link with potentially accelerating atherosclerosis, a hypothetical link. So yes, supplement with vitamin D daily, by all means, get sunlight. But of course, like with anything, don't go over the top. Okay, so very closely linked to vitamin D is calcium intake and ensuring that anybody has adequate calcium intake. Okay, everyone, I'm going to interrupt that tremendous discussion for a moment to tell you about our expanding health and well-being store. I'm very proud of our natural, uniquely formulated products. Check in the links down below. We've got our natural anti-inflammation immune support, bone support, memory support, heart support, and sleep support. Also, our newly released organic chai mix based on the tea that I regularly drink. We are made in the USA and very proud to be working with a veteran-owned company. Ohighwellness.com if you're in the USA, North America. Ohighwellness.co if you're in the UK, Europe. All right, back to the discussion.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways you can do that as well. I mean, there are, you can get calcium through your foods, and there are a number of foods one can take. We talk about almonds, dairy products, leafy greens, and then there's supplementation, and we do often recommend supplementation. We usually are prescribing both at the same time when we're talking about people with, significant osteoporosis or, really kind of degenerated bones. And we usually give calcium and vitamin D together. Oh, there goes.
So more sunlight coming in. That's also thing. It's meant to be. IFI, for example. Yeah.
Or you just get a lot of sunlight. So
Yeah,
either way.
exactly.
But then now it's the light shining on me.
Yeah.
I think going back to the vitamin D supplementation, how it links to heart disease is that it's really important that if you are getting supplementation of vitamin D, that you do supplement with K2. All right.
Yeah.
And that's really important because that really directs the absorption of calcium into the bones and not the cardiovascular system. And so that leads to, coronary or arterial calcification. Calcium's hard. It causes arterial stiffness. That's linked to high blood pressure. There's lots of different effects to it. So good quality vitamin D supplement should have K2 for better absorption to the bones for it.
Yep. And this is a pleasure of a live show. We're going to take a break for 2 seconds. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to fix that light on our Ojais, because I feel like the light's all coming to this doctor here. So let us fix that. We'll be right with you. Okay, the light is now fixed. I wanted to talk about calcium and how actually it is very difficult. As Dr. Levin mentioned, there are certain foods that contain calcium, but it's very difficult to get the recommended daily amount purely from many foods out there. Be careful. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone will have their own preferences. I personally am a huge dairy fan, but that doesn't agree with everybody. So work out what's best for you. Okay, we talked about supplementation, vitamin D. Other supplements can be associated with strong bones, magnesium, zinc. Of course, bones are not just made of calcium, and vitamin D isn't the only vitamin needed. There are many other different elements as well. So keep that in mind. Let's talk a little bit about toxins and medications that can really affect the ability to have strong bones.
Yeah, so when you talk about toxins, there are quite a few. One of the big ones is alcohol. Now, what we're talking about mainly is alcohol abuse. A small amount of alcohol, at night or at parties is totally fine or sugary. But significant amounts of alcohol over long periods of time can cause a lot of damage to the bones. That's for sure. And then there are other medications, steroids. People have probably heard about this, but some people need to go on prolonged periods of being on steroids, like prednisone is one you may have been on or heard. If you're on high doses for long periods, you can absolutely see problems with the bones.
If I'm not mistaken too, I mean, it's a medication that we've talked about before in one of our other podcasts that it's really most patients leaving a hospital end up on this medication is medications like omeprazole. All right, so there's proton pump inhibitors. They do their purpose, but again, they're left on too long. They're only supposed to be for weeks, and people come back years later and still on it. And they've been linked to things like osteoporosis and other, cardiovascular stuff that it's another time. But I don't know if you guys see that very much at all, but I feel like I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, there are so many toxins around us, so many medications which have side effects of which we've talked about before. But I like that you mentioned steroids and the proton pump inhibitors, and there is research out there suggesting that these can weaken the bones. Okay, let's finish up then with medications, and we'll make a whole separate section on this because it's such a big topic. But would you like to touch upon medications that can be used to treat osteoporosis and make bones stronger? Because I'm sure for many people watching, many of you may have been offered these medications. Many of you might even be on them right now.
Absolutely. So there are kind of two medications you're going to hear about a lot. One is the bisphosphonates. And what is that? Well, one of those that you probably have heard is Fosamax. And that is, there's a bunch of different ones. It's called Aldendronate. And it is a pretty commonly prescribed medication to slow bone loss. And what you're going to see is your doctor is going to have you get regular bone scans every few years, and they're going to check a few levels to see if you're losing less bone, is basically what the studies do. These are pretty good meds at slowing bone loss, but they have a fair amount of side effects. The big one you're going to see that's pretty common is esophageal reflux. That's heartburn, and you can see that in a fair amount of patients that take it. If you don't get that side effect, great. You can see muscle and joint pain. You can see higher levels of calcium when people start taking this, and you can also a rare side effect, but a very bad one, is called jaw osteonecrosis, where you basically have severe dysfunction of the bone in your jaw. The other one you're going to hear about a lot is a medication called Prolia, which works differently. This is an injection that you take about every 6 months, and it causes some similar side effects such as fatigue, joint and muscle pain. It can also cause some what we call atypical fractures, so some fractures that present really kind of differently. And it can increase your risk of certain kinds of infections. So these are the main side effects with these kind of medications. It's always better, in our opinion, to try to fix things naturally. If you have to use a medication for something, your doctor will talk to you about it. But as we've talked about, there are many different ways you can approach this issue. And usually that is preferable to medications if possible.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ben. That comes up a lot. How do you offset some of those side effects? Like I know, I'm pretty sure with Fosamax, like standing up after and with a tall glass of water, which seems really simplistic, but does help, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. So if you stand out, if you don't lie down for 30 minutes after you've taken the medication, yes, taking a glass of water, that can be helpful. You can try to offset it that way, but if you get really severe symptoms, you're going to have to talk to your doctor about it.
Also, with Fosamax versus the injectables, what would decide for someone to take like an oral medication versus like intravenous? Because this comes up a lot, and I'm sure great people out there probably want to know.
So for the oral medications, we often begin on those, but they have a timeline. After about 3 to 5 years, you're not supposed to continue them. You need to take a break, and that's often when people switch to Prolia and medications like that. So that's often when people are going to offer you the alternative treatment. There's some more nuances to that depending on the person and their labs and what's wrong with them. But typically, if you've been on the pill for a certain amount of time, they are going to offer you switching you to an injection.
Right. That's very interesting. Yeah. So we have gone over there the gist of how anybody can do their very best to maintain natural, strong bones with each passing year. So closing statements from each of us. I will start off by saying that everything when it comes to health and well-being is about how many boxes can you tick to tip the odds in your favor. There are never any guarantees, but I wish the medical establishment would stress this more. There are so many things that you could be doing every single day if you want to stay strong and be as healthy as possible for as long as possible. So please keep in mind what we talked about. If I could talk about probably the two biggest things that most people are not doing, it would definitely be the protein intake and the strength training. Particularly strength training, don't underestimate how much that can keep your bones strong with each passing year. And you can just start off, surely you have time for 20 minutes, 3 times a week, upper, lower body, light dumbbells.
For me, I think the big takeaway is anytime you have to use a medication, you're going to start increasing your risk of side effects. Now, some people need medications, and for some conditions, you have to be on a medication. But for most of the conditions we're discussing here with you, there are other ways. There are natural ways. Sometimes they're harder to achieve, but it's always better. It's always safer to try to do it naturally. If you can't achieve it, sure, medications. But that would be my advice. Always try to do it that way first.
I agree. Less medications, better, regular exercise, high quality, good supplements with K2, as we talked about. A really strong bones, strong heart.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very well said. Okay, everyone. Thank you for watching. And also, if you're interested, please do also check out our natural supplement store down below and our vitamin D supplement, which also contains K2, collagen, and zinc. Link down below in the description. We are all rooting for you to succeed. Thanks again, and we will speak to you next time.